The night was colder than usual, and though the heater hummed softly in the corner of the living room, a chill settled deep into my bones. I sat quietly on the old couch, hands folded in my lap, trying not to make too much noise as my son and his wife talked in the kitchen. From where I sat, I could hear the faint clinking of dishes and the low murmur of their voices. Something about the tone sent unease through me. I had been living with them for the past few months, ever since my health had begun to falter. Years of working long hours, skipping meals to save money for my son's education, and neglecting my own needs had left my body weak. I couldn't manage alone in the little apartment I had once rented, and my savings had dwindled after the endless stream of medical bills. When my son offered to have me move in with him and his wife, I thought it was a blessing. I thought I would finally get to be close to family, to hear laughter in the evenings, to watch as life bloomed again in the form of their soon-to-arrive child. But lately, things had changed. My daughter-in-law had always been polite but distant. After her pregnancy was announced, her politeness wore thin, replaced with something sharper. She avoided me in the hallway, rolled her eyes when I tried to help in the kitchen, and sighed heavily whenever I asked her about the baby. Still, I told myself it was just the hormones, the stress of pregnancy. She would warm up eventually. That night proved me wrong. The kitchen conversation grew louder, sharper. I could hear my name. My heart began to pound as I strained to catch the words. Then she came into the living room, her hand protectively cradling her belly, her eyes fixed on me with a mixture of annoyance and cold disdain. "I don't want this old leech here while I'm pregnant," she said flatly, her voice echoing in the quiet room. I froze. The words hit me like a slap, leaving me breathless. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Leech. That was what she saw when she looked at me. Not a mother, not a woman who had given everything to raise her husband into the man he had become, but a parasite, draining them. My eyes darted to my son, who had followed her into the room. His face was pale, his jaw tight. He didn't meet my eyes, only stared down at the carpet. "Mom," he whispered, his voice strained, "maybe it's better if you find another place. Just until things settle down. You know she needs peace right now." Another place. My mind spun. Where could I possibly go? My apartment lease had been given up months ago. My pension barely covered groceries, let alone rent. My body wasn't strong enough for work. I felt like the walls of the room were closing in, suffocating me. I wanted to scream, to remind him of the nights I had stayed up when he had fevers, of the 2 jobs I worked so he could go to college, of the meals I skipped so he would never go hungry. I wanted to remind him that I was his mother, not some stray they had taken in. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I sat there, frozen, gripping the edge of the couch so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My daughter-in-law turned away, satisfied with his silence. She walked back into the kitchen, her slippers brushing against the floor like a final dismissal. My son stood there for a moment, then finally looked at me. His eyes were watery, filled with conflict, but his lips didn't form the words I needed to hear. Instead, he said softly, "It's for the best, Mom." Just for a while. The betrayal cut deeper than anything his wife had said. Her cruelty I could accept. After all, she didn't know my sacrifices. But him. My own flesh and blood. The boy whose scraped knees I had kissed, whose tears I had wiped, whose future I had built with my bare hands. To hear him tell me to leave, it shattered something inside me. I moved slowly, as if each step drained what little strength I had left. My trembling hands reached for the small suitcase I kept by the closet. I had never unpacked fully, always keeping my belongings neat and ready, as though deep down I knew this day might come. I folded my clothes carefully, though tears blurred my vision. Each shirt, each scarf carried memories of years past. The scarf my husband had given me on our last anniversary. The sweater my son had bought me when he got his first paycheck. I pressed them to my chest briefly before placing them inside the suitcase. The sound of the zipper closing echoed in the silent room like a door slamming shut on my past life. I looked around the house one last time. The family photos on the wall seemed to mock me, my smiling son in his graduation gown, my daughter-in-law at their wedding, me standing beside them with pride. That day I had felt so certain that my sacrifices were worth it, that my son had found someone who would love him as much as I did. Now, those photos were just reminders of how misplaced my faith had been. I walked to the door, suitcase in hand. My son followed me, his steps heavy. At the threshold, he paused. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking, "please don't hate me. I'm trying to keep the peace." I looked at him, my heart torn between love and unbearable hurt. I reached out, cupping his face with my hand. His skin was warm, his eyes filled with shame. "I could never hate you," I whispered. "But one day, you'll understand what this feels like." I stepped outside, the cold night air biting into my skin. My son hugged me briefly, and I clung to him, wanting to hold on forever, but he pulled away too quickly. Then the door shut behind me with a heavy thud, leaving me alone on the porch. The street was dark and silent. I tightened my scarf around my neck and began to walk, each step echoing in the stillness. My suitcase wheels rattled on the uneven pavement. I had no destination, just the unbearable weight of rejection pressing down on my shoulders. As I walked further, memories flooded my mind. I remembered carrying my son on my back to school when he was too tired to walk. I remembered working double shifts at the factory, my hands blistered, so he could have books and new shoes. I remembered the nights I cried silently, afraid I couldn't give him the life he deserved. And now, all of that seemed invisible to him. The world blurred through my tears as I kept moving. I was no longer a mother in her son's home. I was just a woman, old and unwanted, with nowhere to belong. That night, under the cold and indifferent stars, I realized something I never wanted to believe. Sometimes, the people you sacrifice everything for are the first to push you away when you need them most. The morning light crept slowly over the horizon, painting the park in shades of pale gold. I sat hunched on a wooden bench, my thin sweater doing little against the biting cold. My suitcase rested at my feet, a silent reminder of everything I now owned. I had spent the night on that bench, too ashamed to knock on a shelter door, too broken to call anyone for help. The dew soaked into my shoes, and my bones ached from the chill. I felt invisible. People passed by, jogging with headphones in their ears, walking their dogs, pushing strollers, yet no one looked at me. I was just another tired face, another figure slumped in the corner of the park. The loneliness pressed down harder than the cold. Just as I lowered my head, fighting back another wave of tears, I heard a voice. Faint at first, but familiar. My name, spoken with disbelief. My heart jolted. I looked up, blinking against the morning light, and there he was, my younger brother. I hadn't seen him in years. Life had pulled us in different directions. He had moved to another city, built his career, raised his family. We had spoken occasionally on the phone, but distance and pride had kept us apart. And yet, here he was, standing in front of me with shock written all over his face. "Is it really you?" he asked, his voice trembling as he rushed closer. His eyes scanned my frail figure, the worn clothes, the tears still clinging to my cheeks. Without waiting for an answer, he pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. I broke then, sobbing against his shoulder like a child. "What happened? Why are you here?" he asked, pulling back just enough to look me in the eye. Through broken words, I told him everything. My daughter-in-law's coldness, the cruel words she had thrown at me, the silence of my son that had cut me deeper than anything else. I told him how I had been asked to leave, how the door had closed behind me with nothing but rejection in its echo. As I spoke, my brother's face grew darker, his jaw clenched, his eyes flashing with anger. When I finished, there was silence between us, broken only by the distant sound of birds. Then he took my hands firmly in his. "Listen to me," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You will never feel unwanted again. You are my sister. You stood by me when I had nothing, when the world seemed against me. Do you think I would let you suffer now? No. You're coming with me. Today. Right now." I tried to protest, ashamed of being a burden, but he silenced me with a look. "Enough," he said. "You've carried others all your life. Now it's time someone carries you." Tears welled in my eyes again, but this time they weren't only from sorrow. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt seen. I felt valued. I felt loved. My brother didn't just take me to his home, he welcomed me into his life. His house was warm, filled with the laughter of his children, the aroma of food cooking in the kitchen, the comfort of belonging. He gave me a room of my own, with soft blankets and a window that opened to a garden full of flowers. "This is your home now," he told me. "Not for a few days. Not for a while. For as long as you want." In those first weeks, I began to heal. My body rested, my heart slowly pieced itself back together. My brother's children treated me with kindness, running to hug me when they returned from school, asking me to tell them stories. His wife cooked meals and sat with me, never making me feel like I was intruding. Every day, I felt stronger, not just in body, but in spirit. And then, one afternoon, there was a knock on the door. I answered it, and my breath caught. It was my son. His face was pale, his eyes red and swollen, as though he hadn't slept in days. He looked at me with desperation, his lips trembling as he whispered, "Mom." I froze, torn between the love that had once defined my life and the pain of betrayal that still lingered deep inside me. My brother appeared behind me, standing tall and protective, his presence a silent shield. My son's eyes darted between us, and then he fell to his knees right there at the doorway. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I was weak. I should have stood up for you. I let her push you away when I should have fought for you. Mom, please, forgive me." Tears stung my eyes. Seeing him broken like that tore at my heart, yet the wound he had left in me still bled. I stepped closer, my hands trembling as I placed them on his shoulders. "You hurt me in a way I never thought possible," I said softly. "You turned away when I needed you most. Do you know what that does to a mother's heart?" His tears flowed freely now. "I know. And I regret it every moment. I can't change what I did, but please, give me a chance to make it right. I don't want to lose you, Mom." Behind me, my brother placed a hand gently on my shoulder, grounding me. His presence reminded me that I was no longer alone, that I didn't have to beg for scraps of love from those who dismissed me. I looked into my son's eyes, filled with remorse. My heart ached with conflicting emotions, anger, sorrow, love, and longing. He was still my child, still the boy I had raised with everything I had. A mother's love doesn't vanish, even under the weight of betrayal. But something inside me had changed. "I forgive you," I whispered, and his body shook with relief. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I will not return to a place where I am unwelcome. I have found a home here, with people who value me. If you truly want me in your life, then you will come to me. On my terms. He nodded vigorously, still crying. "Anything, Mom. Anything. Just don't shut me out." I helped him to his feet, and for a moment, we embraced. His tears soaked into my shoulder, and though my heart softened, I knew I could never erase the pain entirely. Trust would take time, maybe years, to rebuild. As he left, my brother's arm remained around me, steady and reassuring. You did the right thing, he said quietly. That night, as I sat in my new room, I gazed out the window at the moonlight casting silver across the garden. I thought about the cruel words that had driven me out, the cold door that had shut in my face. And I thought about the warmth of my brother's embrace, the laughter of his children, the love that had given me a second chance at dignity. I realized then that I was not a burden. I was not a leech. I was a woman who had given her all, who had been tested by cruelty but had risen again in the arms of those who truly cared. And this time, I would never let anyone make me feel less than I was. I had found where I truly belonged.